North Korea's foreign minister has launched a fresh verbal attack on President Trump. Speaking at the United Nations, Ri Yong-ho called President Trump a mentally deranged person full of megalomania. He said Trump's threat to destroy his country had made a rocket assault on the United States all the more inevitable. Andrew Plant has the story.
Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, the place where tens of thousands of North Koreans gathered to show support for their leader Kim Jong-un and their anger at America's leader Donald Trump.
Who
the hell is Trump to talk about the collapse of our government? We are resolved to settle our differences with the US by military force if war breaks out.
After I heard the announcement, my anger at the psycho Trump was unbearable. His words at the UN were quite ridiculous.
America, in turn, has demonstrated its strength and its own offensive options. The US Air Force flying bombers and fighter jets over waters east of North Korea. The closest they've flown to the country this century, said the Pentagon. It shows how seriously America is taking what they've called North Korea's reckless behaviour. Its national motto translates as powerful and prosperous. 25 million people live in North Korea. Its increasingly antagonistic words and frequent missile tests have made many uneasy. But there's been no sign of North Korea hoping to placate or appease any escalating tension. Their foreign minister pulling no punches in a speech to the UN, saying Donald Trump was mentally deranged and on a suicide mission.
The absurd reality is that a person like Trump, a mentally deranged person, full of megalomania, who is chastised by his own people as commander-in-chief, as President Evil, a gambler who uses threats, fraud and schemes, has his hand on the nuclear button. This is the greatest threat to international peace and security.
Donald Trump has said North Korea would pay dearly for its hostile behaviour. America, he said, would totally destroy the country if it was ever forced to defend itself. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to our correspondent, Danny Savage, who is in Seoul for us now. Danny, I'm slightly losing track of who is reacting to who, but anyway, Donald Trump has had more to say, hasn't he, in the last hour?
Yeah, Donald Trump obviously heard the words of the North Korean foreign minister at the UN in previous hours and has tweeted his reaction in the last few minutes. And he says that if the North Korean foreign minister echoes the thoughts of Little Rocket Man, they won't be around much longer. So a renewed threat to wipe out North Korea from the American president. But that, of course, comes off the back of this operation in darkness, we understand, with the American Air Force flying B1 bombers up out of Guam, meeting up with F-15 fighters from Okinawa in Japan, and flying that sort of show of strength, show of force mission off the east coast of North Korea. And interestingly, it wasn't done as a photo opportunity, if you like. It was a proper military mission done with the consent of the South Koreans after some consultations between the two countries. And that happened, and they've gone the closest that they've ever gone to North Korea for some time. That in itself does have some risks. If North Korea were to scramble their jets to intercept or to come out to challenge the American jets, you know, that could see a potential misunderstanding in the air, some potential fighting taking place. So I think there are some military experts that are quite alarmed by what the Americans have done over the last few hours, just taking it up a little step further, doing that show of force off the coast.
Yeah, how is this ramping up of the rhetoric being viewed there in Seoul?
Well, I think the consistent line from the South Koreans is that, yes, they are cooperating with the Americans and things are done with the South Koreans in the loop, if you like, but They, of course, are always pushing for diplomatic solutions and encouraging their neighbours in the north to come back and start negotiating and start talking. So among everyday people here in South Korea, again, life goes on as normal. They're used to this sort of thing going on. There's been lots of noise coming from North Korea for years now, so life goes on as normal here. But there's a little more concern in the air, if you like, the longer this goes on and the bigger and tougher the rhetoric gets.
Does the government there feel like it is being listened to? Because in the last few weeks, it has appeared that China and South Korea have been increasingly irrelevant as Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump exchange blows directly.
I think you have to almost divide this down the middle. You have to look at what the two leaders are saying publicly in their slanging match with each other on Twitter and at the United Nations and through other statements, sort of the trading of insults, the threats to mutually destroy each other, accusing both of being on a suicide mission. And then look at the diplomatic efforts taking place as well, because although the Chinese, as you suggest, might feel as though they're out the loop, the Chinese have actually, fully come on board with the latest sanctions that have come into force. Just yesterday, it was announced that the Chinese were going to bring into force those sanctions by limiting oil imports into North Korea, banning textile exports out of North Korea as well. So they are doing their bit, and South Korea are doing their bit as well, and they are talking. So the diplomatic channels are well and truly open between the Americans, the Chinese and the South Koreans. Donald Trump has praised the Chinese recently for their the way that they've been handling this crisis. So those channels are still open, but of course publicly, the one that's grabbing all the headlines are the insults between the two leaders.
Yes, Danny, thank you very much. Danny Savage there in Seoul for us.